Late at night, Daniel heard laughter echoing through the empty halls of his apartment complex. But there were no children living there. The old apartment. The first time Daniel heard it, he thought it was just his imagination. A soft, playful giggle echoed through the dimly lit hallway of his apartment complex. It was faint, barely noticeable over the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old wooden floors. But the sound was there, childish, innocent, yet strangely unsettling. He paused mid-scroll on his phone, his finger hovering over the screen, his brow furrowed. He had lived in this building for over a year, and as far as he knew, there were no children here. The tenants were mostly elderly residents or young professionals like himself. The building, with its outdated plumbing and flickering lights, wasn't exactly the best place to raise a family. Yet, there it was again, a high-pitched giggle, followed by the soft patter of footsteps. Daniel sat up, glancing at the door. Wasn't the type to scare easily, but something about this felt off. He walked toward the entrance, hesitating before placing his ear against the wood. Silence. He exhaled, shaking his head. Maybe it was someone watching TV with the volume too high, or maybe one of the tenants had a visitor. That was logical. That made sense. Just as he turned to walk away, tap, tap, tap. The sound of tiny, wet footsteps. A sudden chill ran down his spine. His fingers hovered over the door handle, heart pounding in his chest. Slowly, cautiously, he turned the knob and pulled the door open. The hallway was empty. Dim yellow light flickered from the ceiling, casting eerie shadows along the peeling wallpaper. The air smelled damp, like old wood and mildew. But what made Daniel's stomach twist was the sight on the floor. A trail of wet footprints, small, like those of a child. His breath caught in his throat. The footprints led from the far end of the hallway, directly to his doorstep, and then into his apartment. He whipped around, scanning the room. His living space was modest, just a couch, a coffee table, a small kitchen in the corner. The hardwood floor gleamed under the dim glow of a single overhead light. Everything looked normal, except for the footprints. They continued past the threshold, fading as they reached the center of the room, but there was no sign of anyone. No child, no intruder. Daniel swallowed hard. His rational mind fought to explain it. A leak from the ceiling, a neighbor's prank. But deep down, he knew neither of those explanations made sense. A sudden rustling noise made him spin toward the bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. He had left it closed. His pulse thundered in his ears. He reached for the nearest object, a glass from the coffee table, as if that would protect him from whatever this was. Slowly, he approached the bedroom, nudging the door open with his foot. Nothing. His bed was undisturbed, the closet doors shut. No signs of movement. Yet the air felt different. He couldn't explain it, but something was there, lurking just out of sight. Then, from behind him, a whisper, faint, almost like a breath against his ear. Daniel spun around, heart hammering, but the room was empty. Enough. He wasn't going to let his mind play tricks on him. With a deep breath, he stepped back, closing the bedroom door behind him. He grabbed a towel, wiping away the damp footprints, telling himself that there had to be a reasonable explanation. By the time he settled back onto the couch, exhaustion began to creep in. He forced himself to ignore the lingering unease and closed his eyes, just as sleep was about to take him. A soft giggle right next to his ear. His eyes snapped open, breath hitching in his throat. His body went rigid as cold air brushed against his skin. And then, just beyond the glow of the street lights filtering through the window, a small shadow moved. Daniel sat frozen on the couch, his breath shallow. The small shadow in the corner of the room barely moved, just a faint blur near the window where the street lights cast long, eerie streaks across the floor. His mind raced through every logical explanation. Maybe it was a trick of the light, a reflection from outside. But deep down, he knew better. Slowly, he turned his head, trying to focus. His heart pounded, each beat echoing in his ears. The room was silent, save for the distant hum of the city outside. Then, the whisper came again, a faint, almost playful murmur, like a child's voice speaking just below the threshold of hearing. It was too soft to make out the words, but it sent an unnatural chill through him. Daniel bolted upright, reaching for his phone. The screen's glow was a reassuring warmth in the cold air. He hesitated before switching on the flashlight, his thumb hovering over the screen. He didn't want to see whatever was standing in that corner. Yet the idea of sitting in the dark, vulnerable, was worse. With a deep breath, he tapped the light on. The beam cut through the dimness, illuminating the far end of the room. The shadow was gone. His chest rose and fell in uneven breaths. He swept the light across the walls, the floor. Nothing. The whispering had stopped. The apartment was still. Trying to shake the unease, Daniel pushed himself up and walked toward the window. The streets below were empty, the sidewalks glistening from a light rain earlier in the night. A neon sign from a nearby diner flickered, casting a weak red glow. Everything looked normal. Maybe he was just exhausted. That had to be it. Stress, lack of sleep, too much caffeine. He had been working late the past few weeks, deadlines piling up. It wasn't surprising that his mind was playing tricks on him. With a sigh, he turned away and nearly tripped over the wet footprints. They were fresh. Daniel stumbled back, his breath catching in his throat. The footprints hadn't been there a moment ago, and they weren't just near the doorway anymore. They were right behind him. A cold wave of dread washed over him. He followed the trail with wide eyes as the footprints led from the bedroom door across the floor, stopping mere inches from where he had been standing. Someone or something had been right behind him. Daniel's hands trembled as he backed away, his mind screaming at him to get out. He grabbed his keys from the table and rushed to the door, fumbling with the lock. Then, the door slammed shut, not by his hand. The force of it rattled the frame, sending a heavy silence through the apartment. Daniel staggered backward, his heart hammering. His shaking hand reached for the knob, twisting it frantically. Locked. He hadn't locked it. Panic surged through him. He turned, scanning the room, pulse pounding in his ears. His gaze darted to the footprints. They were starting to fade, as if being absorbed into the floor. The air grew heavier, pressing against his chest. The room felt wrong, colder, darker, like something unseen was watching him. And then, a creak from the bedroom door. Slow, deliberate. Daniel's eyes snapped to the hallway. The door, which had been shut just moments ago, was now slightly open. He wanted to move, to run, but his body refused to obey. Every instinct screamed for him to get out, but fear held him in place. Then, softly, from the shadows of the bedroom, a voice, high-pitched, playful, "Come play." The words sent ice through his veins. No, he wasn't staying to find out what was in that room. With a sudden burst of movement, he turned back to the door, twisting the knob violently. This time, it gave way. He stumbled into the hallway, slamming the door shut behind him. His breaths came in short gasps. The hallway was eerily quiet, the old wallpaper peeling in the dim lighting. He pressed his back against the closed door, trying to steady himself. The laughter echoed again, but this time, it was coming from inside his apartment. Daniel didn't look back. He ran. Daniel didn't stop running until he reached the ground floor of the apartment complex. His breaths came fast and shallow, his hands trembling as he braced himself against the wall. The old building's lobby was dimly lit, the flickering overhead bulb casting strange shadows along the cracked tile floor. The night outside was quiet. The streets were empty, save for the occasional distant hum of a passing car. He stood there for a moment, trying to slow his heartbeat, to convince himself that what had just happened wasn't real. But it was real. The wet footprints, the whispering voice, the door locking on its own. He wasn't imagining things. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt a fear that logic couldn't erase. He turned his gaze toward the stairwell, debating whether he should leave the building entirely or try to figure out what was happening. Then, a noise, a soft, rhythmic tapping. It was coming from above. Daniel stiffened. The sound was light, like the bare feet of a small child running along the hallway. It was getting closer. His instincts screamed at him to leave, to walk out the front door and never come back. But something kept him rooted in place. He wasn't the kind of person who believed in the supernatural. He had spent years dismissing ghost stories and urban legends as tricks of the mind. But now he wasn't so sure. Gathering what little courage he had, Daniel forced himself to move. He climbed the stairs cautiously, gripping the railing tightly. His floor wasn't far, just the second level, but the distance suddenly felt immense. As he reached the landing, the hallway stretched before him, dim and eerily quiet. His apartment door was still shut, standing like a dark monolith at the end of the corridor. And then, a sound. Not laughter this time, not whispers, but humming. Soft, sweet, a child's tune, unfamiliar, yet unsettling in its innocence. Daniel's breath hitched. The sound was coming from inside his apartment. Someone was in there. His fingers tightened around his keys. He should leave, call someone, get help. But deep down, he knew no one would believe him. No one else had heard the laughter. No one else had seen the footprints. This was his problem. With slow, deliberate steps, he approached the door. The humming continued, unbroken, as if whoever was inside didn't care that he was listening. He reached the knob and hesitated. His mind screamed at him to stop, to turn around and leave. But he forced himself to move. He slid the key into the lock and turned it. The door creaked open. The apartment was dark. Shadows stretched along the walls, twisting and flickering as the city lights outside shifted. The air felt colder than before, heavy with an unnatural stillness. Daniel stepped inside, heart pounding. The footprints were gone, the floor was dry. But the humming, it was coming from the bedroom. His stomach knotted. He hadn't left the bedroom door open, yet now it stood ajar, the space beyond swallowed in darkness. A single breath escaped him. His fingers curled into fists as he took a step forward, then another. As he reached the door, the humming stopped. Silence. Daniel pushed the door open wider. The room was empty. His bed, untouched. The closet doors, shut. The air, still and cold. But something was wrong. The window. It was unlocked. He was sure he had locked it earlier. He never left it open. Not in this neighborhood. A new fear crawled into his chest. Was this really something unnatural? Or had an actual person been in his apartment? Someone playing tricks on him? Someone who could still be here? His fingers twitched toward his phone. He needed to call someone. Report this. Then, the closet door creaked. Daniel's breath caught. His eyes locked onto the wooden panels, his pulse hammering against his ribs. Slowly, the door edged open, revealing a sliver of darkness beyond. Then, a whisper right beside his ear. Found you. The lights flickered. Daniel staggered back, his hand knocking into the bedside lamp. The bulb sputtered and went out, plunging the room into near darkness. His chest tightened as he scrambled toward the doorway. He needed to get out, now. As he turned, the bedroom door slammed shut on its own, locked. A chill rushed through him. He turned, pressing his back against the door. The closet door was fully open now, revealing nothing but blackness. And then, the giggle. Soft, playful, close. Daniel reached for the doorknob, twisting violently. It wouldn't budge. His breathing came in short, panicked bursts. Then, slowly, something moved inside the closet. A shape. Small, childlike, standing just beyond the threshold, half hidden in the shadows. Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears, his vision blurred with panic. He pounded against the door, desperate, his throat tight with terror. Then, everything went silent. The lights flickered back on. The air felt normal again. And when Daniel turned back toward the closet, it was empty. The door stood open, but nothing was inside. No child, no shadow, just stillness. The bedroom door clicked, unlocking on its own. Daniel didn't hesitate. He lunged for the handle, yanking the door open and stumbling into the hallway. His heart hammered as he looked back, expecting to see nothing. The apartment was quiet again, but he knew the silence was temporary, because whatever was in this apartment, it wasn't finished with him yet. Daniel didn't sleep that night. After escaping the bedroom, he had locked himself in the living room, sitting on the couch with every light on. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what had happened. The whisper, the closet door opening on its own, the small shadow standing in the darkness, and then nothing. The silence now felt even more unnerving. It was as if the apartment itself was waiting. At some point, exhaustion took over, and his eyelids grew heavy. But just as he was about to drift into uneasy sleep, a knock at the door. Daniel's eyes snapped open, his heart pounding. Knock, knock, knock. It wasn't frantic. It wasn't aggressive. Just 3 soft, rhythmic knocks. For a long moment, he didn't move. memory of the locked door slamming shut on its own was still fresh in his mind. What if this was another trick? But then, a voice. Mr. Carter, Danielle, blinked. The voice was real. A person. He hesitated before slowly standing and making his way to the door. Peering through the peephole, he saw a woman standing in the hallway. She looked to be in her late 40s, dressed in a thick coat, her eyes filled with concern. With a deep breath, Daniel unlocked the door and opened it a crack. Yes. His voice was hoarse, sleep-deprived. "I'm sorry to bother you," the woman said gently. "I live in the unit below yours. My name is Mrs. Albright." Daniel nodded slowly. He had never spoken to her before, but had seen her in passing. She hesitated before speaking again. "I wanted to ask if you've heard anything unusual." Danielle stiffened. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Albright glanced down the hallway as if checking to make sure no one was listening. Then, in a lowered voice, she said, "I heard laughter, a child's laughter. It was late, past midnight. It sounded like it was coming from your apartment." Daniel's blood ran cold. Seeing his reaction, Mrs. Albright pressed on. "I don't mean to intrude, but there haven't been children in this building for years. And she faltered, lowering her voice even more. "I used to hear that same laughter a long time ago, before you moved in." Daniel swallowed. "How long ago?" Mrs. Albright's face darkened. "Almost 20 years." A deep unease settled in Daniel's chest. He wasn't sure he wanted to hear what she had to say next. Mrs. Albright glanced down the hall again before stepping closer. "There was a little boy. He used to live in this building, right here, in your apartment." Daniel's grip tightened on the door frame. "He was about 6 or 7, she continued, "always running around the halls, playing. He loved to play hide and seek, but one day, he went missing." Daniel felt his stomach drop. They searched everywhere. The police, the neighbors. No one ever found him. His parents were devastated. Eventually, they moved away. She paused, looking troubled. After that, strange things started happening. People heard laughter at night. Wet footprints appeared in the halls. And then, tenants started leaving. Daniel's hands felt clammy, and no one ever found out what happened to him. Mrs. Albright shook her head. It was like he vanished into thin air. Silence stretched between them. The hallway suddenly felt colder, the air heavy with something unspoken. Finally, Mrs. Albright sighed. "I don't know if you believe in ghosts, Mr. Carter, but if you've been hearing things, you should be careful." Daniel nodded, though he had no idea what he was agreeing to. Mrs. Albright gave him one last knowing look before turning and heading back down the hall. Daniel slowly shut the door. He stood there for a long time, his mind racing. A missing child. Laughter in the halls. Wet footprints. He turned, his eyes scanning the apartment. Had he been sharing his space with something all along? Something that had never truly left? He exhaled shakily. No, he needed to be rational. There had to be an explanation. Determined, he grabbed his laptop and started searching online. If a child had gone missing here, there had to be records, news articles, something. He typed, "Missing boy, Carter Apartments, 20 years ago." The screen loaded and almost instantly, an old newspaper article appeared. His heart pounded as he read the headline. "Local boy vanishes without a trace." Daniel clicked the article, his eyes scanning the faded text. 6-year-old Benjamin Carter was last seen playing outside his apartment on the second floor before he disappeared on the evening of October 12th. His parents reported him missing when he failed to return home. Police conducted an extensive search of the building and surrounding areas, but no leads were ever found. His case remains unsolved. Daniel's breath caught. Benjamin Carter, his last name. It was just a coincidence. It had to be. But then, at the bottom of the article, was a grainy black and white photo. A small boy smiling brightly at the camera, dark, curly hair, wide, innocent eyes. Daniel stared, his pulse hammering. It was the same boy he had seen in the shadows of his bedroom. His hands went ice cold. A sharp tap broke the silence. Daniel flinched, looking around. The noise had come from behind him, the bedroom door. It had closed on its own. His breathing grew shallow. Then, a giggle, soft, playful, coming from inside the room. Daniel clenched his fists. He couldn't keep running. If Benjamin was still here, if something had happened to him, Daniel had to know the truth. Slowly, he walked toward the bedroom, his heart hammering against his ribs. He reached for the doorknob, paused. Then, with a deep breath, he pushed the door open. The room was dark, still, and in the center of the floor, a single wet footprint. Small, childlike. Daniel exhaled shakily. Benjamin. The air grew colder. Then, a whisper, right behind him. Found you. Daniel's body froze as the whisper brushed against his ear. Found you. His breath hitched. The room felt impossibly cold, the weight of unseen eyes pressing against him. The small, wet footprint still glistened on the wooden floor. But he wasn't running this time. Swallowing his fear, he took a slow step forward. Benjamin, he whispered, his voice unsteady. Are you trying to show me something? The air shifted. A faint rustling sound filled the room, like fabric brushing against the walls. Then, a thump. Daniel's head snapped toward the closet. Another thump, deeper this time. The door shuddered slightly, as if something had moved inside. He hesitated. Every instinct screamed at him to leave. But something about this moment felt different. The fear was still there, but beneath it, an overwhelming sense of sadness. Benjamin wasn't trying to hurt him. He was asking for help. With a deep breath, Daniel stepped forward and reached for the closet door. It creaked open slowly. Darkness greeted him. The tiny space was empty, just as it had always been. But something was off. The wooden floor inside didn't look quite right. Kneeling, Daniel ran his fingers along the boards. One of them was slightly loose, a hiding place. His heart pounded as he dug his nails into the edge and pried the board upward. Dust filled the air, and something small and soft tumbled out onto the floor. Daniel's breath caught. A child's shoe, tiny, worn, covered in dust. His stomach twisted. Benjamin hadn't just disappeared. He had been here the whole time. The realization hit like a wave of ice. This wasn't just a ghost story. It was real. A child had vanished in this apartment, and no one had ever found him. Until now. Daniel's fingers trembled as he picked up the shoe. The apartment felt different. The walls no longer just walls. but silent witnesses to a tragedy long buried, and then a whisper, soft, trembling. I was hiding. Daniel's chest ached. "I know," he whispered. "I know, Benjamin." The air grew heavy, charged with something unseen. The light flickered. The apartment seemed to hold its breath. Then, for the first time, Daniel saw him clearly. A small boy stood in the center of the room. His dark curls were tousled, his clothes slightly tattered. Wide, sad eyes locked onto Daniel's. He looked real, so real that for a moment, Daniel forgot to breathe. The boy's lips parted. I wanted to come out, but he was there. Daniel's breath caught. "Who?" Benjamin's gaze flickered toward the closet. His voice dropped to a whisper. "The man." The word sent a chill through Daniel's bones. His fingers curled around the shoe, his mind racing. Had someone done this to Benjamin? Had he been hiding from someone in the apartment that night? Someone who had never meant to let him leave? The room darkened. The air turned suffocating. Then, a sudden knock at the front door. Bang, bang, bang. Danielle jumped. It wasn't polite. It wasn't hesitant. It was loud, forceful, like someone trying to get in. His pulse thundered in his ears. Slowly, he turned toward the bedroom door. The knocking continued, relentless, echoing through the walls. Benjamin whimpered. Daniel clenched his jaw and moved. If there was someone outside, he needed to know. Step by step, he crossed the apartment, the knocking growing louder with every second. Then, silence. He reached the door, held his breath, and opened it. Nothing. The hallway was empty. A long exhale left Daniel's lips. His body sagged slightly in relief. Maybe. A hand grabbed his wrist. Cold, small, desperate. Daniel gasped, looking down. Benjamin stood beside him, shaking his head, his eyes wide with fear. "Don't let him in." Daniel's heart stopped, and then the door slammed shut on its own. The lights flickered wildly. A deep, rattling breath echoed through the apartment, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. Daniel staggered back, pulling Benjamin with him. The air turned suffocating, the walls trembling, as if something unseen was moving within them. And then, a voice. Low, wrong. "You found him." A shadow moved in the corner of the room, tall, twisted, its shape shifting unnaturally as if it had been waiting. Benjamin gripped Daniel's hand tighter. "He doesn't want me to leave." Daniel's chest tightened. "You're not staying here." The shadow lurched. The lights exploded, plunging the apartment into darkness. A wind howled through the room, though the windows were shut. The floor creaked under unseen footsteps. Daniel ran, dragging Benjamin with him. He bolted toward the front door. The handle wouldn't turn, locked, sealed shut by something stronger than metal. Behind him, the air shifted. The whisper returned. "Mine." Panic surged through Daniel's veins. He wouldn't let this happen. Not again. With a desperate shout, he slammed his fist against the door. "He's not yours." The apartment shook. Then, light. Bright, blinding light flooded the room, piercing the shadows. The suffocating presence reeled back, hissing in agony. The walls groaned, the air crackling with unseen energy. And then, silence. The cold vanished. Daniel's chest heaved, slowly, cautiously. He turned. The apartment was empty. No shadows, no whispers, just stillness. His gaze dropped to his side. Benjamin was gone. Daniel's heart twisted. He looked around, half expecting to see him, but the boy had disappeared, not in fear, but in peace. A deep, quiet understanding settled over him. Benjamin had been trapped here for years, held by something dark, something that wanted him to stay. But now he was free. Daniel exhaled, his hands trembling as he finally unlocked the door. The hallway was empty, but for the first time, the building felt normal. As he stepped outside, he hesitated, glancing back one last time, and in the dim glow of the apartment's single flickering light, he swore he saw a small figure standing by the window, watching, smiling, then gone. Daniel swallowed hard, then turned and walked away. He wasn't staying here anymore. Some places weren't meant to be lived in, and some ghosts, once freed, never look back.